Dr. Sanjeev Wagmare, who has been at ACTREC since 2010, so is one of our younger faculty, I would say. Sanjeev finished his PhD from ICGEV in Italy. That has a center also in Delhi, but he did that in Italy. And then he pursued his postdoctoral career at Cornell University and Indiana University, Purdue University in stem cell biology. He has done a postdoctoral work at Cornell, and more impressive is that he is part of a team that created a genetically modified clone pig from liver stem cells to prevent hyperacute rejection. So Sanjeev is going to share some of that information with you about how you can take stem cells from just being cells to being something larger, even if it's just a pig. But pig also is a good system to study many other activities and understand biology as a whole. Sanjeev now has a good team. He's helped us set up the stem cell biology group at ACTREC. He has about 4 PhD students, and I understand one of them is graduating soon within the 5 years that he's been here with us. And he's very active, taking part, organizing the international conferences in stem cells, as well as being part of the team which is ensuring that the science that we do in the labs is also going to the Northeast region. We have Center of Excellence at ACTREC, where DBT has funded a program where I think twice a year at least 15 faculty come from the Northeast to learn different areas of biology and biotechnology at ACTREC. And so he's also part of that team. So with this, I request Sanjeev to give his lecture.
Dr. Surekha for kind introduction. And I would also like to thank Dr. Surekha and the Indian Women's Science Association for giving me an opportunity to give a talk over here on stem cells. And so today I'm going to talk on stem cells. The title is Current Knowledge, what we have, and the promises for regenerative medicine. So what I'm going to talk about today is, I will give you a basic idea about like what are stem cells. Then I will talk about different kinds of stem cells like embryonic stem cells, then adult stem cells, and then I will also talk about induced pluripotent. And at the end, I am going to touch upon on somatic cell nuclear transfer, which is also very important, and it may be useful in the organ transplantation. So the first slide is on what are stem cells. So the stem cells are the cells which maintains tissue homeostasis throughout the life of an animal. They have self-linear property. They have ability to divide n number of times without differentiation. So they remain in an undifferentiated state. Then the stem cells are pluripotent, and they have capacity to differentiate into various cell types. So pluripotent stem cells are the embryonic stem cells, and the adult stem cells are the multipotent stem cells. I will come to that in a moment. So I will just talk about how the this is a zygote, which divides it, give rise to 2 cell stage, 4 cell stage, then 8 cell stage, so on and so forth. So this stage is called a morular stage. Then this is the blastocyst stage. So this zygote is called totipotent. So it can give rise to an entire organism. Now when we talk about embryonic stem cells, they were isolated from this blastocyst stage. It was first identified in the mice in the year 1981 by 3 scientists, where they isolate these cells from here, and they are called as ES cells, and they can give rise to cell types of various tissues, of all the tissues in the body. Okay, but they cannot form an organism. So they are called pluripotent. Okay, totipotent means they can give rise to organ which is a zygote or the very early stage, 2 cell stage or 4 cell stage, or maybe up to 8 cell stage. And this is just wanted to show you that how this takes place in humans, like 16 cell stage blastocyst, and then you have in 20 weeks you have a full fetus which is developed. And the embryonic stem cell which I was talking about, they are isolated at this particular stage. And then I will just talk about the further step, which is the formation of the gastrula stage, which give rise to all these 3 different germ layers like ectoderm, then this is the mesoderm and the endoderm. So ectoderm will give rise to the skin cells or neuron cells or brain cells or pigment cells, and then mesoderm will give rise to all these different cell types. Similarly, the endoderm will give rise to lung, thyroid cell or pancreatic cells. So basically a zygote which fertilizes will give rise to a morular stage, is not shown here, and then you give rise to blastocyst stage, and then it gives rise to a gastrular stage where there is a formation of a germ layers and then different cell types are formed. Okay, and the embryonic stem cells were isolated from this stage, blastocyst stage. And there are like different signaling pathways which are involved in the regulation of these stem cells, which I'm not going to talk about today, but just to show you that there are like developmental signaling pathway like Wnt, sonic hedgehog and Notch. These are the very important pathways which are involved in the stem cell regulation. They are involved in the embryonic development, they are involved in the proliferation, they are also involved in the cancer, which I'm not going to talk about today, but specifically they are important in this stem cell regulation. Now what is the history, what we know about the history of the stem cells? So the first nuclear transfer was performed in the year 1952. Then John Gurdon, who got the Nobel Prize in 2012, he cloned the tadpole generated from the frog intestinal cells. And the first isolation of the adult stem cell, which is the hematopoietic stem cell, which happened in 1963. And then in 1981, the embryonic stem cells were isolated from the blastocyst stage, which I just talked about. And then Michael Resnick and other people have also identified the mouse germ cells from the fetal germ cells. And in 1997, the first animal cloned from an adult cell, which was the Dolly the sheep by Professor Wilmot. And then the embryonic stem cells were isolated from the humans in the year 1998 by James Thompson. And recently, 10 years ago, it was a big news of isolation of the induced pluripotent stem cells by Professor Shinya Yamanaka. So this has really popularized the science and also has provided a lot of hopes in regenerative medicine. And after now it's almost like 10 years now, and a lot of things have happened in due course of time. And just to summarize you, these are different kinds of stem cells. One is, this is a totipotent, which can give rise to an entire individual. Pluripotent, they can give rise to all the different cell types, but they cannot form an organism. Multipotent are the cells which are the cells of the tissues. So every tissue will have their own stem cell. For instance, skin will have their own stem cell, liver will have their own stem cells, or other organs, every organ will have their own stem cells. So for instance, hematopoietic stem cells. So they can give rise to all the different lineages of the hematopoietic system. like red blood cells or leukocytes, all monocytes, all the different lineages of that particular tissue. Okay, so that's why they are called multipotent. And also they are unipotent, which I have not mentioned. Unipotent is, for example, if I talk about a skin, where you have different region in the skin. One is the interfollicular epidermis, one is the sebaceous gland, and other is the hair follicle. So there are certain stem cells which are in the sebaceous gland. They can only give rise to sebaceous gland only one part of the entire epidermal component. So they are called unipotent. Okay. Now, what are adult stem cells? Okay. So this is the adult stem cells. They reside in a niche, and they give rise to progenitor cells, and then they give rise to a differentiated cells, and they reside in a niche. So this niche is very important. Niche is nothing but it's a microenvironment where this stem cell resides in a tissue, and it has a particular location in the tissue where they reside, and thereby they maintain their stemness. And once they come out of the niche, they become progenitors. Then they further give rise to a differentiated cells, okay, of that particular tissue. So every tissue will have their own stem cells. Okay, so the niche is here. So for example, the intestinal stem cells will have this particular region called crypt, a niche where they will reside. In the hair follicle, there is a region called bulge where these stem cells reside. For neural stem cells, the region is a subventricular zone where the stem cell will reside. Same way in the corneal limbal stem cell, they will reside in the limbus. Then the terminal bud for the memory stem cells, and of course for the hematopoietic stem cells, the bone marrow. So every tissue will have their own niche where they will reside. They come out of the niche, they divide, and they give rise to the differentiated cells. And once they come out of the niche, they will differentiate. As I was telling, that they first give rise to progenitor cells, and then they give rise to a differentiated cell of that tissue. So I'll just give an example of skin here, where you can see initially this is just at the beginning. You just see a small hair placard. It's called hair placard. Then it gives rise to a big small hair follicle, and then it gives rise to a big hair. So this is basically a formation of small hair placard to a entire hair follicle. So this is because the stem cells which are there, which they give rise to all these different layers of the skin. And similarly, one of the region, this is called the interfollicular epidermis. So the stem cell reside here, and they give rise to different layers, which is this one, the green one, which I showed here. Okay. Similar, and why are they important? Why these stem cells are important? So as you know, they have potential to dramatically change the treatment of human disease. There are already various stem cells, they already exist, like bone marrow is transplant that are used to treat leukemia. Now people are using hematopoietic stem cells. So in 1950s, people used to do the bone marrow transplant. But after the isolation of the stem cell, which happened in the year 1963 by Till and McCulloch, people now started to use the hematopoietic stem cells for treatment of the leukemia. Then there are various trials ongoing to treat various diseases like Parkinson's disease, spinal cord injuries, various muscle damage. So a lot of things are undergoing, but they are still in a trial. And the reality is this one, where you can grow these epidermal stem cells for this burn patient, which is 90% burn, and you grow this layer, grow these cells in culture, and you graft this into the patient. You can see there is a formation of normal skin. So this is the reality. So this has already worked. Okay. The same thing. An example of this is the alkali burn, and the limbal stem cells were isolated from there. They were grown, and you can see they were again transplanted, and you can see it's a normal. It has recovered that. So basically, what I'm trying to say here is that the stem cells are totally not like they are just in the very early phase. Many things are already in clinic, like this skin stem cell or the corneal stem cells, or the hematopoietic stem cells for treatment of leukemia. Okay. Now this is another example which I wanted to talk about the bioengineering of the hair follicle. But I'll just briefly talk about this again. When you transplant these epidermal stem cells, you will get a normal skin, but you will not be able to form a hair follicle. A normal hairs will not come. So there is also a certain kind of, like, these stem cells are from the interfollicular epidermis, so they are not able to give rise to the hairs. So recently there was a group this is a Japanese group, they published in Nature Communication. So they isolated these epidermal stem cells and grown together with the dermal cells, and they grafted into the mouse, and you can see there is a formation of hair. Okay, so this actually is still not yet come in the clinic. People are using the epidermal stem cells, which I was talking about this, and I'll just go back to my previous slide. These are the stem cells people are isolating from this layer, which is the basal layer, which is basically hair. Okay, and so they can give rise to the skin, but they are not able to give rise to the hair. And the cells which are present in this hair follicle, which is here, this bulge region, it's here. So these stem cells can give rise to all the different lineages, like interfollicular epidermis, this particular entire hair follicle, sebaceous gland, etc. Okay, so whatever I showed the example here, these cells were isolated from the interfollicular epidermis, so that's why they cannot give rise to a normal hair. So people are now working on how can we have a normal skin coming up with the hairs and everything. So this is still, a lot of things are happening here. And this is another example of the people who are bald. So what happens is that in this is alopecia, situation where there are no hairs, the hairs are lost, and there is no new formation of hairs. So there is a problem. The stem cells are there, but they are not able to get activated, and that's why there is no formation of the hairs. So this is another example. So people are also trying to work on how to activate these stem cells which are already kind of there, but they are not able to get activated, and hence there is no formation of hair. So this also people are trying to work upon. How can we activate these stem cells with a particular small molecule which can help? And this is a very, very important thing in the young people who are about 35, where the hairs are lost, and this will be a very important thing for those people. And as I was telling you, this is the history of these stem cells, just like a very brief. So in 1950s, there was no isolation of the adult stem cell, but people were using the bone marrow for treating the leukemia, so which is already shown here. And these bone marrow stem cells were isolated in 1963. And similarly, different kind of stem cells were identified, adult stem cells. So this is all adult stem cells I'm talking about. Now, I would like to come to induced pluripotent stem cells. Okay, so first I talked about adult stem cells, their importance in the clinical scenario, and I told you also that what are the still caveats and problems. Still, a lot of research has to happen in these stem cells so that they can. And other thing is about this new area which has come up in the year 2006, where Professor Shinya Yamanaka actually isolated these induced pluripotent stem cells. So what are these induced pluripotent stem cells? Okay, so they are similar to the embryonic stem cells, and as I told you earlier, embryonic stem cells are pluripotent, means they can give rise to cells of different parts of the body, essentially all the cell types. Okay, but the problem is that there is an ethical problem. How can you work on these embryonic stem cells? Okay, in US during the George Bush resigned, the working on the embryonic stem cells was banned, completely banned. Okay, so that research was not happening much when at that time I was in US, and this research was not happening much because there was no funding there. So in 2006, a scientist from Japan, he came up with a new way of deriving these embryonic stem cell like cells. So what he did was, you can take any cells from the body, you culture them, and you transfect with them with different transcription factors, and you mimic a scenario wherein they will become like the ES cells, and they are called induced pluripotent stem cells. So now the ethical question is not there, because you cannot work on the embryonic stem cells. So, but on the adult stem cells you can work. So you can essentially just reprogram. So this is called reprogramming in the scientific terminology. Okay, so reprogramming a somatic cell, okay, which is already a differentiated cell, and then you reprogram it to at an early stage to the like embryonic stem cell state, that is called induced pluripotent stem cells. So they have the similar function. So this is the way they have done it. So let's say this is the skin cells, okay, transfect with the 4 transcription factor, which is the OCT4, SOX2, KLF4 and CMYC. So these are the transcription factors which are expressed in the embryonic stem cells. So if you express these markers, I mean these genes into the skin cells, which is a somatic cell, now you can see there is a formation of these ES cells, and they can give rise to different cell types. So this was like a Nobel Prize. They got the Nobel Prize in the year 2012, Shinya Yamanaka and John Gurdon. So these are embryonic stem cell and the iPS cells. They look the same, and you can see on the side these are the feeder layers, okay, mouse feeder layers, where you can culture them and they look like this colony. But when you remove the feeder layers, they grow like this colony. So they both look like identical, but when you remove these feeder layers, they grow in a monolayer. Otherwise they will form a colony like a 3D culture they will form. Okay. And these cells have the capacity to form all the cells of the body. And once you isolate them, how to show that these isolated stem cells are really the induced pluripotent stem cells? So you have to look for the morphology, how they look like. Okay. Then you have to see if there is expression of this stem cell marker or the genes which are expressed in the embryonic stem cells. Then you go for taking these cells and trying to see if they are capable of forming the 3 different germ layers. And this is the assay teratoma formation, means whether they can form teratomas in the mice. And this is a very important thing, tetraploid complementation also, where the one way to actually say that these cells are iPS cells. So whatever cells you have derived, they are iPS cells, because when you do this reprogramming with different transcription factors, it is possible that the reprogramming is partial or maybe a mid-level. So you have to characterize this with these different steps to show these different steps to show that the stem cells, whatever we have you identified, they are the true iPS cells. Now you can imagine that if you can make these stem cells, so essentially you can take your skin cells and isolate and grow them in culture, and if you require, let's say, retinal cells, and then you can grow these cells and you can convert them into retinal cells and you can transplant into you. So there is an important thing, what has been achieved is rejection. So you can essentially take your own cells, culture them, put back to you so that there won't be a rejection. Okay, so that's why this technique has become, or this technology has become very, very powerful. That you can take at any time, you can take the cells and you can culture them, you can graft them, and you are recovered with disease. So this has happened for the macular degeneration, which I'll come about in a moment. So this really has revolutionized the field of stem cells, where you don't require to preserve. Also, you must be seeing that there are many companies around in India where they are collecting the fetal stem cells, cord blood stem cells. Okay, and why they are collecting? Because it may happen that in future more research will happen, and then the person, if the child who requires, he or she requires the stem cells, maybe that can be cultured and that can be given to the person who is already having a disease, so he can get disease free. That's the idea. But that's good, because if you actually isolate them and keep, it's also good. But let's say if you don't have that possibility, let's say during our time, we never had, like, opportunity to isolate the cord blood stem cells and store them, right? For them, iPS will also work. So you can essentially take your skin, I can culture them, I can reprogram them into any cell type I want, and then I can get disease free, right? So now there are different methods. Actually, I think you don't have to will not go into detail. So there are different ways of transfecting these different transcription factors, and then you can make a cell, you reprogram a cell and behave it like the induced pluripotent stem cells. And this is just like history, when it was the first isolated in 2006 and now 2011, what is the status? So people came first with the genes, then came with some chemical compound, then came with RNA. So there are different things which are happening. Now, one important thing which was here was people initially were using these, episomal vectors or adenoviral vectors. So basically what happens is, when you want to transfect these genes into a cell, this virus can integrate into genome. So that can be detrimental to the human. So that's why people have now come up with the small molecules. So when you have a small molecule, you can still also reprogram these cells into the iPS-like cells, and you can get the thing. So this refining is still in process. And this is just to show how this iPS looks, the ES looks like. And then once you isolate these cells based on the morphology, then you have to pass certain tests to prove that they are iPS cells. So first is the morphology, second is to see whether they are expressing this OCT4 or SSC4 or SOX2 to prove that they are ES cells, right? And this is just a teratoma formation which I talked about, is another test to prove that the isolated cells are the iPS cells. And this is another technology which is called tetraploid complementation. This also is another test to prove that the cells which you have isolated are indeed the iPS cells. So when you make an iPS cells, there are different techniques to prove that they are indeed iPS cells. And so this is the summary. So basically, an example, if the mice is suffering from a sickle cell anemia, for example, you collect the skin cells, you reprogram the cells, right? And then you have the genetically identical cells, you correct the mutation, because sickle cell anemia, you have a single base mutation. So you collect this mutation, and then you put into the mice here again back, and you have the mice which is the recovered mice, right? So this is like kind of a reality where you can take a cell, you correct this defect, because now you must have heard about various technology where you can knock out a gene, like CRISPR. Have you heard about CRISPR? Are you familiar with CRISPR? So with that technique you can correct this gene, and then you can grow these cells, then differentiate it into the lineage what you want. So let's say blood lineage, and then you put into the mice is now recovered. So this is the potential of these induced pluripotent stem cells. The same case with the human, right? Now another example of the spinal muscular atrophy, where in this patient the neurons are dying, for instance. So you collect these cells from the skin, convert them into the iPS cells. Now these repaired iPS cells, they will differentiate into the healthy neuron. Then this can be transfected into the same patient. Okay, so this is the potential of these stem cells. Now other potential is in terms of making drugs. The reason is there are certain diseases which you cannot make a model. So for example, for example in this case, you cannot make a mice model, for example. Then you already have the human model here, and you can screen for thousands of molecules and try to identify a drug which can help to cure rather than the cell therapy. So there are two ways it can help, and this is really a reality, because for example, if you put a cell, maybe you don't reprogram it properly, and if you are putting it into the animal or into the human, there will be a possibility that it will form tumors, right? So that still we do not know what will happen. So that this particular portion, the right hand side, will still take more time to actually go into clinics. But I will have an example where we show that the cell therapy also works. But if you take this in comparison to this cell therapy versus this finding new drugs, it's really a reality, because you can mimic the human model in culture, you can screen for libraries of drugs, and you can come up with a drug for treating a particular disease. So this is very very exciting to with these iPS cells. And so this is the application of the iPS cell we just talked about. You can have these iPS cells, and you can do the drug screening, you can make the disease model and study. So a lot of things can happen with these iPS cells. So this was the first clinical trial of iPS. So iPS were made in the year 2006 by Shinya Yamanaka. So in 2014, a 70-year-old woman is the first recipient of the next generation stem cell, which are the iPS cells. So what happened? This is the scientist who actually worked on that iPS cells, and what she did was, her lab essentially, the lady was suffering from macular degeneration, so there was a problem in the retinal cells. So they took the skin cell from that particular patient, isolated these cells, reprogrammed these cells into the induced pluripotent stem cells, then differentiated them into retinal cells, and they were transplanted into this 70-year-old Japanese woman, and she found the recovery of that. So this was the first trial which happened in 2014. Okay, almost 8 years after the isolation of the induced pluripotent stem cells. So it does work. Okay. Now this is just this is just like when it was isolated, and what is the status till now. So again I'll go back to this slide. So this was happened in 2014. Now they wanted to do in the next patient in 2015. So what they found was, the cells, when they made these iPS cells, they found there was some genetic abnormality. So it didn't pass through the clinical test, and so they have halted this trial. So they are now still thinking about what is happening at the genomic level, because you are taking a cells growing in a culture, and you are transfecting with these different transcription factors, and making these cells iPS cells, and then differentiating them into the desired cell type, like in this case is retinal cells, and then you are transplanting into the patient. So before transplanting the patient, you need to check the genomic of the genome of that particular cell, because it is possible that the genome has been scrambled. And in the second transplant, they found that there was a problem in the genome. So they have halted the trial. So that's what this is the 10 years of these iPS cells, and you can see in this 2015 the Japanese trial is halted, because they want to make sure that whatever they are transplanting is really there is no error in the genome level. So but still it will in maybe after 5 years this can be solved. So what I wanted to say is that it has really revolutionized the treatment, where spinal cord injury or this kind of macular, there is no pill available for the macular degeneration. So this can save the vision of the woman. So this really has a tremendous potential, and for more importantly, that lady does not have to store her cord blood stem cells, because at that time the facility was not there. So people who have not stored the cord blood stem cells, there is no problem. You can still take your skin cells, you can culture them, you can reprogram them, you can convert to the desired cell type what you want, and transplant them. Now there are challenges which I am going to talk about. What are the different challenges? So but before that, I want to talk to you about another part, which is the somatic cell nuclear transfer. I have time? So this is another area of research where now the iPS cells can make the cell types, but they cannot make an organ outside the body, right? So how to circumvent this problem? So there is a technology called somatic cell nuclear transfer. Okay, so I'll come to that. So I think most of you have heard about Dolly, the sheep which was cloned in the year 1997. Yes. So this is the way it was cloned. If you see, the sheep cells were taken, the nucleus was removed from the oocyte unfertilized egg, and then with the electric shock, this embryo was allowed to germinate in the culture, and then this was transplanted or implanted into a surrogate mother, and that's how the Dolly the sheep was cloned, right? Same thing you can do with the humans also. You can take the unfertilized egg, you can have the embryo, and you can put in a surrogate mother, and we can make clones of ourselves, right? But there is an ethical problem. We cannot do this, right? So how? I mean, during my postdoc, I have done this cloning. So what we did was, so the objective of the project was that in United States, many people are dying because of the liver cirrhosis, and there is a shortage of liver there. So how to circumvent the problem of shortage of liver? Because you cannot, like, you have to wait for the person to die and then get that liver and then graft or graft it to the transplant into some other person. Because for kidneys, people have 2 kidneys, so 1 kidneys can be donated, but liver cannot be donated unless the person dies. So there was a shortage of liver. So our idea was, how can we circumvent this problem? Can we use the pig liver as a short-term bridge to the patient who are about to die, and there is no hope for their survival? So we thought of grafting the the pig liver, which is physiologically as well as anatomically similar to humans, such that the patient can survive for a short term, short time. So, but the problem is that if you take, let's say in humans also, if you take organ from X person and put in, like, a Z person, the organ will get rejected. So there is a hyperacute rejection. So similarly, if you are taking animal organ and if you want to put into the humans, it will be rejected immediately, right? So we wanted to genetically modify the pig in such a way that the organs, whatever we are going to graft to the humans, it will not be rejected. So the first hurdle was a protein which is there on the pig cell surface. There's a 1,3 galactoside transferase, which if you knock this particular gene off, then perhaps there won't be a hyperacute rejection, because in humans we don't have. During the due course of evolution, this gene is not there. Okay. So what I did was, I isolated the liver stem cells from the fetal liver stem cells, because that time the CRISPR-Cas9 technology, what we are talking about, knocking out the gene, was not there. So I had to follow the old laborious technology called homologous recombination. And homologous recombination, if people know, it works very well in the yeast system. It's like 100% knockout in the yeast. But when it comes to mammalian cells, the percentage is like 0.1% or 0.1 to 0.5%. Because in the mammalian cells, the homologous frequency is less, and the non-homologous end joining frequency is very high as compared to the yeast system, which is also an E. coli. Okay, so there was it's a very laborious task to actually knock that gene out and then to clone the gene. So we first made the liver stem cells, and then we grow them from long population doubling, and we found that the fibroblasts, which was the control, which you see in the red color here, they senesced after 30-35 population doubling. They were not growing further, but the stem cells were growing further. So we thought, oh good, we got a stem cell which is growing well in culture. But the problem is that have we actually created mutations at the genome level? So we did the karyotyping, and fortunately we found that the karyotype of that pig cell was normal. Okay, so then the next task was to knock out the gene. So we knocked out the gene, okay, in the cell culture, and then we did this technology which is called somatic cell nuclear transfer. So this is the oocyte, which is unfertilized egg, and we put the injected the cells which I have genetically modified into this cell, and this is the needle to hold this oocyte, and you with this needle you can inject your cells which you have modified, and then you put this into the surrogate mother. Okay, and we got this cloned pigs. Okay, so now this pig is a transgenically modified pig. If you use these organs and if you want to graft into the humans, it will not be rejected, and this is under trial now at the Purdue University. Okay, so the problem of the IPS where you cannot graft the organs, this is the another hope where you can make the organs, use the pig organs and graft them into the humans. Now people are now thinking is to have the chimera. So having in the pig, can we have the human organ going, human liver growing, or the human kidney growing, something like that. So that there the kidney or the liver, whatever you transplant, it will last for longer. Because see, the liver when you transplant into humans from animal, it may last for let's say 1 month or 2 months or 3 months. Although it's a boom for the patient who is dying, but still there are a lot of modification has to happen so that it can last longer. So if you do if you think human to human transplantation for kidneys, it is around, the half-life is around 10 years. Although it is HLA matching and all that, still there is a delayed rejection which happens in the hindsight. So, and you are transplanting a pig liver into humans, definitely is going to not last for longer. So a lot of manipulation we have done. I think the lab which I was there with Dr. Joseph Tector, he is now directing the lab, and now they have moved to University of Alabama where they have opened a big program on xenotransplantation. So these trials are undergoing there. And this is just to show the history of the pig, the somatic cell nuclear transfer. But the important thing which I wanted to bring to your notice is, these are the various challenges which you are facing with the stem cells. Identifying the true stem cells in the adult tissue. See, we are isolating the cells based on the markers, and then we do certain tests to prove that these cells are adult stem cells or embryonic stem cells or iPS cells. Okay, but we have not come up to a very foolproof technology where we can say that okay, this is 100% true stem cells. Whatever we are isolating could be a progenitor cells or the early cells which are about to lose the stemness characteristics, but they are behaving like the stem cells. So that is important thing first. Second thing is we need to understand the basic molecular mechanism has to be understood. If we want these stem cells to work for the longer duration, then we have to understand the basic biology, how the stem cells are regulated. See, the stem cells can be regulated at different level. The signaling pathways, metabolism is there, DNA repair is there, epigenetics is level there. So different things has to happen. Understand the knowledge, and then it will help for the stem cell to sustain for a longer duration in the patient. And then important thing is that when you are transplanting any cells into the body, whether it is integrating into the body and performing the original function of the endogenous cells which are there in the body. There is another gray area to study. And definitely the immunological rejection. The IPS has actually circumvented the problem of the immunological rejection. Okay, but making the IPS cell, still there has to be more newer technologies to come so that you can make the IPS cells to increase the frequency of generating the IPS cells. Now the frequency is still, there are many methods available, but the frequency is still low. So that needs to be, that needs to happen. And of course, the important thing is, lastly but not the least, the tumor formation. Whatever you are putting into the humans or any animal, we don't care. Generally we always treat animals like this. Just use them as a tool. In the tumor, nothing happens. But in the humans, if the tumor, we take it very seriously. So this is a very another important part which we have to look about, that what happens to the cells, where the cells goes in the body. They should be lineage. There should be lineage tracing of these cells. Tracing means when you inject into the body, where they are going. What is the ultimate goal, ultimate destination. Okay. So these are the various challenges which needs to be addressed, and definitely the take home what I want to give to the audience, to the younger audience, is that stem cells has a lot of promises. It has given a lot of a lot of things to the humankind already, like in treatment of leukemia, or in the burns, or in the retinal problem, or during in the eye problem, right? So for other things it will take some time, but definitely it will come. And whatever you see from the from the media point of view, there is a lot of hype going around. But so when there is a lot of hype, people think that, okay, are they real or not? So, but my message of what I want to give to the audience is, the stem cells are very important and they are very useful in regenerative medicine. And of course, a lot of things needs to be, they are at a very premature level. A lot of things need to happen. A lot of studies needs to happen to come as a foolproof. Like when you go to a chemist shop, you take a medicine. I want, I am suffering from headache. Can you give me this medicine? I am having, can you give me ibuprofen? I am having a pain. So this level will take some time to come, but definitely it will come. So it is not that stem cells are hype; they are real, they are reality. Okay, and as I discussed with you in this lecture, a lot of things which are already in practice and already in clinical application. So with this, I would like to end my talk. Thank you.
So I'd like to thank Sanjeev. I think you'll agree with me, he's taken you from cell to an organelle and to a whole body. Of course, it was big, but you can also see the regenerative potential of this technology. I'm sure he's willing to answer questions if any of you would like. Yeah, please.
Yes.
So I was interested in a topic like when a patient is subjected to stem cell therapy, and I was thinking if somebody is subjected to stem cell therapy, it might develop into a tumor or cancer. So is there a mechanism which stops it, or is it a probability chance it will develop or it will regenerate the whole organ?
No, it can go anywhere, we do not know. So one has to do the tracing of these cells when you put it. So right now what people are doing is they are transplanting these cells. Okay, and there are a lot of trials that are going in India which are not ICMR approved. And you must be hearing somewhere that, okay, the patient is getting cured. Okay, but I think that for human purpose, it's still not as approved. Like for example, for the burn patient, you can grow the stem cells, and so nothing has happened. No tumor has. There was no reports of formation of report. So,
okay.
Yeah.
For organs, if we try, is it possible that every time tumor will be there? Because
possibility is there, of course. There is definitely a possibility. That's why we have to understand more about their biology, because where they are homing. Because when you transplant these stem cells, they can also go to a particular destination. So I can give an example of mesenchymal stem cells, which I didn't talk about today. So mesenchymal stem cells are also a type of ideal stem cells. They can give rise to a cartilage lineage. They can give rise to a bone lineage. They can also give rise to a adipocyte, which is a fat lineage. And these stem cells doesn't have a class 2, MSC class 2. So they are low immunogenic. So when you transplant into the patient, now which is very much popular now, so it will not be rejected, will not get rejected immediately. However, we do not know what it will cost to the patient. Okay. Secondly, whatever you are transplanting this mesenchymal patient into the patient, their half-life is very less, around 14 days or 20 days. So they disappear from the system. Okay, but it may not be true with the adult stem cells. Okay, like for example, hematopoietic stem cell. Nothing. It has already been in the clinic to treat leukemia. Nothing has happened adverse. Right. So, but certain cells definitely stem cells of different tissues. We know about blood, nothing has happened. We know about skin, nothing has happened. So it is not that other cases it may or may not happen. We do not know. Right?
I think, Sanjeev, the question might be that where you're not manipulating the stem cells outside,
Mm-hmm.
the chances are less. But if you manipulate them outside,
Yeah.
then the chances would be more.
Definitely.
Yeah, so IPS probably has more chance
Of having the genomic alterations,
Yeah.
possibly.
So, are there any other questions?
Sir, yeah, if there is a tumor in the body, then how can it be monitored? Means in what part the tumor is? What imaging techniques should be used for that?
Technique to be used to identify the tumor.
Yeah.
We have to monitor. So you have to label these cells
Okay.
and then monitor. So first this should be done in a preclinical model.
Okay.
Label these cells and see where they are homing.
Okay.
And then we can check also, like for example, PET CT scan people are doing, so they can label and check this cells. So there are so similar kind of tracing experiment. If it's possible in humans, they can be used.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sir, I know one technique, PET imaging. So is it possible to use that technique to monitor that tumor?
Technique to
Monitor the tumor. Where is it present?
Technique to monitor tumor. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You have to do the mark these cells and try to see whether they are forming tumor or not. PET CT. That's what I'm saying. The PET CT already. Yeah, for the PET CT. Yeah, so you actually mark these cells and then you see the formation. You measure the 2-deoxyglucose.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Known as FDG, but it is not metabolized.
Yeah.
It gets accumulated in cells which are growing very fast.
Fast.
And that is a characteristic of a tumor, and so you think that a tumor is located there.
Any? No.
Yeah, if you are inducing cell to become a heart cell or something, and when you inject it back, the stem cell of a heart, it will go to the heart only.
Yeah, you have to. If you inject, you have to inject in a particular place. So you have to maybe do operation and maybe inject.
You cannot do it.
You cannot inject it into intramuscular and it will go there.
So that means you have to put it on the target.
Yeah. Target side. That is better always.
And you're talking about xenograft.
Yeah.
So when you're putting various
Organ.
organs, will that maybe if it's a pig, the pig will reject our organ, no?
No, we are going to put the pig organ into humans.
Yeah, so
So the chances of rejection will be there. So that's why we are genetically.
no, if you're
modified.
looking at the other way around, you're growing organs in pig,
So we
human
are-
organ in
So
pig.
we'll make the pig in a such a way that genetically modify in such a way that it will not reject the formation of the thing.
Okay, so you have to genetically
Yeah.
first modify
Yeah.
the HLA gene itself.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Looks lot of discussion here. Maybe you have questions.
Sir, how long does it take to for the pluripotent stem cell to get formed into another cell?
Oh, you are talking about differentiation, or you are
How
talking about?
long does it take?
So
and
first,
how-
starting from a somatic cell to making the iPS cells,
Yeah.
it will take around 3 to 4 weeks.
Okay.
Okay, and then from the iPS cells to your desired cell type, let's say for in your case, let's consider it is a blood cell, it will take another couple of weeks, maybe 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So it's not time is not long.
Okay. So within 3 to 4 weeks, the new cell is formed.
Yeah, cells is in culture. I'm talking about culture. Yeah.
Maybe you should also enlarge on what is the number of cells that are really required to be, placed somewhere to overcome a deficiency. So if something to do with heart muscle, how many cells would be required?
Maybe I think at least 10 million or so.
So it depends on how much is
Yeah.
required by cell.
Advances in the hair regeneration, because
Yeah.
you are talking about the baldness. So, what is the recent advances which have happened in baldness treatment? I mean, there are some technologies which I've heard about FEU. FUE or something like that. There is some technology which is available. So
But that is not related to stem cells.
yeah, is it not related to stem cells?
No, that is not related to stem cells. No, no. So I told you about that paper which came in 2012 from the Japanese group, where they are able to grow the hairs in the mice. Okay, we using the epidermal stem cells and growing the dermal cells together, mimicking the environment of for the stem cell which is required for its full potential. Not yet.
Discussing among yourselves, but you can ask him the questions if there are no answers.
Yeah, you are most welcome to ACTRAC, visit our lab.
Yeah, connect up with him and I'm sure he'd love to have you. With this, I'd like to thank you all for being with us and thank Dr. Devjani, the faculty of DY Patil Biotechnology and Bioinformatics for hosting us today. Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, all of you who have joined us here today.
On behalf of the school, we would like to thank IBSA for organizing this lecture and Dr. Sanjeev Wagmare for having accepted the invitation. Sir, if you would just accept this kind token from us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
There are refreshments arranged for all of you outside, so please have that before you leave. And the next time that we have a lecture, let's hope that the interactions with the speaker are far more than amongst yourselves. Okay, thank you.